We have a lot to talk about here today. Lots of big news coming out of the NHL tonight, including major news around the NHL salary cap going up more than we expected. New information as well, and big updates on the Four Nation Faceoff happening next February. Plus, we also got more news regarding expansion, plus some trade talk around some key players like Marty Necas. One NHL insider says there's no way he's going to the Montreal Canadiens. We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, the Rangers say nothing is off the table. We could see big change there. And are the Penguins heading more towards a rebuild? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. Of course, today is the beginning of the Stanley Cup Finals. Game 1 goes tonight. As I set to record this video, Game 1 will be starting in less than an hour's time. So by the time this video hits YouTube, that game will be underway. Oilers versus Panthers. Of course, as we know, we've already previewed the series here on the channel. I've given my predictions. Of course, like I said, the series starts tonight down on Sunrise. Be curious to see how everything goes. You kind of have, some of the top players in the world in this series, a lot of top talent. So it's going to be a good exposure. Some people are pegging it as Canada against the U.S., but it's really not. It's just Edmonton against Florida, and I hope it's a great series, and we'll go from there. But of course, because it's a Stanley Cup Final, we got some talk from Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, as well as the NHLPA Executive Director tonight. So certainly, they have a State of the Union type of address, if you will, State of the League address, multiple times per year, one of them at the beginning of the finals. So we did learn lots of news tonight, some of which was quite important, including some significant news on the NHL salary cap. We were expecting the salary cap to be set for next year at $87.7 million. That was going to be what the calculation had allowed. Obviously, it's coming in higher, though. It's going to be at $88 million. So, might not seem like a lot, but $300,000 when you're talking about teams, being able to offer a little more here and a little more there, 0.1, 0.2 on the odd contract, it makes a big difference. It'll make all the difference in the world in some cases, getting a contract done versus not, and keeping players from switching teams in some cases. So certainly very much welcome news. Obviously, it's the first significant salary cap increase we had since before the pandemic. Obviously, the whole escrow and all the money owed to the owners from the players, that's all done with now. And we can finally move forward with regular salary cap increases. Moving forward, we should expect a similar type increase at the same time next year going in to the next season. So that's certainly very great welcome news. The teams that are up against it the tightest are probably welcoming it the most. GMs across the league and probably are smiling and quite pleased with that wonderful news. We also got a pretty significant update tonight on the Four Nation Faceoff International Hockey event that's going to take place in February 2025. It might seem like a long ways from now, but really it's not. Of course, it'll be around the time that we normally have the All-Star game in February of next season. So we're not far away at all. We actually got confirmation of the schedule and the location. We already knew it was going to be 4 teams, being Canada, the United States, Sweden, and Finland. Now we know the dates, times, and locations, and the broadcasters. So all the major broadcasters are going to be involved in some capacity or another. TNT in the States will have some games. They're not going to have them all. ESPN will have quite a few, including putting some on ABC, as well as Sportsnet in Canada having the full range of all of the games. So we now know on February the 12th, through the 15th, there will be round-robin games taking place in Montreal at the Bell Center. And then the series for the tournament moves to Boston for the final 3 games, which will get 2 round-robin games on February the 17th. And then there's going to be a championship game on the 20th. So there's no semifinals and everything like that. They're doing round-robin style tournament. And then the top 2 teams will battle for the championship. And that's as simple as that. So on February the 12th, we're going to have Canada against Sweden. Then 13th, you have U.S. versus Finland. Both games at 8 p.m. Eastern. On February the 15th, there's going to be a doubleheader. 1 o'clock Eastern, you got Finland versus Sweden. And at 8 o'clock Eastern, you've got Canada versus U.S. Then the series shifts to Boston, as I mentioned. On the 17th, we also have a doubleheader. 1 o'clock Eastern, we have Canada versus Finland. And then at 8 o'clock Eastern, Sweden versus the U.S. And then on the 20th, at 8 p.m., we have our championship game amongst the top 2 teams. I'm sure we'll learn about tiebreakers and all that and how they're going to break that down, because it's quite possible there could have 2 teams tied for, first, second, third place. That could result in determining who obviously gets to play for I'm not sure if it's going to be a gold medal or just exactly how they're going to do this, but who will be crowned champions of the tournament. There's a new logo for the tournament that's been released as well, which I'll show you here on the screen. So the Four Nation Faceoff will be next February 12th through the 20th. They were asked about why not having a semifinal or, longer, and they said basically that they didn't want to have too long of a break, and that, obviously adding more games to the tournament would create an extended time, and they just were content doing it the way that they have here. So I know there was some talk leading up to this in the past week or so that Montreal might not be hosting the event. Apparently there was some concern with the local venue there, and I'm not sure, there was some communication issues they were waiting to hear on confirming the availability or whatnot. I don't know exactly, but just that there was concerns Montreal might not be able to do it, and it might end up shifting to another city, which was probably going to be Toronto, because they really wanted to have part of the tournament take place in Canada and part of it to take place in the United States. So certainly you get 2 original 6 hockey cities with passionate fans. It should be a fun tournament. I know it's not the full extent of an international tournament that we would like and hope to have seen, with hopefully having more countries involved. Lots of big names in the NHL don't have their countries participating, so you won't see them, which is really unfortunate. I really hope that everything comes together to have a true full best on best for the 2026 Olympics, which NHL will be for sure participating in. The other detail we learned about this tournament as well is that on June the 28th, which will be the beginning of the NHL draft, so that same day, we are going to learn where the 4 countries are scheduled to announce their first 6 players announced to be confirmed to be on the team. So that'll be a fun day as well to learn who those first 6 players are. I know there's been lots of talk already about projecting the rosters and who's going to be in it, etc. So I guess we'll get to learn on that day who was right and who's not. Some other notes touched on here by Gary Bettman and Bill Daly. As far as expansion goes, they were asked. Certainly there's been, it's been a pretty hot topic. Kind of cooled off here as of late, but ever since we saw the confirmation of the Coyotes moving to Utah, because we know Utah was heavily interested in the Ryan Smith group on an expansion. Well, they obviously had a little swerve and ended up with a team much sooner than expected after the Coyotes were basically forced to move by the NHL due to lack of arena stability there in the desert. And, well, there's been lots of other talk around expansion and other ownership groups and different locations wanting to get a team. According to Gary Bettman, at this time, he says there's really no news when it comes to expansion on a formal process being opened, but they continue to get plenty of expressions of interest in at least a half dozen or more markets, and they're obviously quite pleased that there's lots of interest, but not ready to take the next steps to officially open a formal process. So I'm really not surprised at all that's the state of things right now when it comes to expansion. I wouldn't be completely shocked, though, if later, sometime over the course of the summer, or maybe going into the beginning of next year, is when we see that. I don't think it'll be long before they do formally open a process so that they can have new teams joining the league, in 2 or 3 years down the road. That would be my guesstimate on that, because certainly it takes time, right? So there was even some chatter, and I don't know how serious it was, that there could be interest from a city like New Orleans to maybe add an NHL team. A little skeptical on that one being a viable market for hockey. I know they have other professional sports, great city, place I certainly want to visit someday myself, which I haven't been there, but based on initial reaction, I don't know. A little skeptical, but there was some talk of maybe having interest there too. So we'll see. There's lots of sports events across North America. It's something that's exploding right now, so it's a very viable time for expansion. It's just a matter of who, what, and where. So we'll have to stay tuned on that. One other big question that came up as well was around the future of Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman. Of course, both guys were let go from their positions because of the Kyle Beach incident with the Chicago Blackhawks. And at this point, they still are not permitted to work in the NHL. Both men do need permission from Commissioner Gary Bettman to accept any positions across the league. Bettman was asked about that, and he said at this point, they're still not eligible to work in the league, and it's something that he has to take under further consideration. So I believe he also said that they both have expressed desire to come back. I'm not sure if there were specific jobs lined up or whatnot, but it's something that they're still not ready to move forward by the sounds of things. They were also asked about the World Junior players that are facing charges based on the situation that happened in London, Ontario from the 2018 Canadian World Junior team. Of course, we know there's 4 NHL players, 5 in total from that team, of course, but 4 under NHL contract that are facing charges right now, and they're all on leaves from their teams, which they took themselves. At this point, they have not been suspended or banished from the league in any shape or form. And of course, I don't think the league can go that far right now. They have not been found guilty, but they are owed a due process here for sure. But there's some talk about how things are going to be handled because all 4 of those players are pending restricted free agents. So they don't have contracts in the league beyond the current season. So as of June 30th, those contracts would be expired. I know Bettman had commented when the charges were first laid, kind of insinuating that there won't be under contract past June 30th anyway, so it won't be a problem. But as far as teams retaining their rights, that's a big question right now. I think a team that has these players are probably concerned a couple of things, one, from a PR perspective, how this is going to look if they offer a qualifying offer to these players. At the same time, they can ask themselves, do they want to have an existing relationship with this player in the future if they are found innocent? Like, lots of things to work through. And they were asked essentially if the league has been counseling these teams on how to handle things and what to do. Bill Daly said essentially not. They have had some inquiries, and at this point, they're just telling them to follow the CBA. So it's kind of likely going to be up to them if they want to issue a qualifying offer or not to retain their rights, because if no qualifying offer is issued, then theoretically they could become UFAs. And then if they are, found innocent and eligible to return to the league at some point, they'd be free to go with any team that's, wanting to offer them a contract. So there is that, but there's also, they also made mention that there have been some talks with the Players Association that there could be other alternatives discussed, but nothing's been confirmed at this point. So I do wonder because there's been some talk about some sort of exception to the RFA qualifying offer maybe being put forth, that they could end up in a situation where basically either we'll see the players could end up being suspended. That's a possibility. Or it could be a case where basically the rights are extended until the trial is over or whatnot, something along those lines, so that they're not having to put forth a qualifying offer to retain their rights. So I'm not sure exactly how they would word all that and the language. Obviously, Bettman and Daly and others, plus they have their lawyers themselves, plus have their own legal counsel, so they'll figure all that out. But there certainly could be more decisions on how to handle that coming forward. But as of right now, follow the CBA and we'll see what happens. But they only have a few weeks to figure this out, so we will see. On the rumor mill, I want to take a look at 3 different scenarios. Marty Necas has been rated at the top of the list for players generating trade talk, trade rumors, and interest around the NHL. Up-and-coming player, still hasn't hit his prime, in my opinion. Been a very highly skilled, dynamic player, showing lots of lots of jump in his game, lots of ability to produce lots of offense. But unfortunately, it sounds like his time in Carolina likely coming to an end. He's been out there between the comments from we've heard from different parties over the course of this, including his dad over in Europe, that he wants a bigger role, wants more power play time, and just wants to be moved to a team where I guess he will feel like he's got more of a role and better value. So signing in Carolina doesn't seem likely, although I wouldn't 100% rule that out. They could make changes to their team where they can essentially guarantee him a bigger role and maybe he stays, but I'm not convinced that that's likely, but I guess anything is possible. But one name and one team that's been heavily rumored to be interested in this player is Montreal. Now, there's been lots of other teams mentioned as well. Necas, like I said, is a dynamic player. There's lots of teams around the league that have varying degrees of interest, but according to Nick Kyprios, so many call an NHL insider, been around the game a long time, has lots of connections and sources. He says, in his opinion, based on what he's heard and what his own knowledge is, that there's absolutely no chance that Carolina trades him to Montreal because of the existing relationship between the two franchises and the bad blood that's been generated over their kind of, I don't know what to call it, but the revenge tactics we've seen regarding the offer sheets between Sebastian Aho and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Of course, the Habs attacked the Canes by offer sheeting Aho. He signed it. They matched. They've not been upset with that contract. It's worked out nicely. Habs thought they were pulling a fast one on the Canes and Tom Dundon because Dundon would not want to pay big bonuses and front-loaded contract. Well, he probably didn't, but he did, and kind of proved them wrong by matching that offer and kept Aho. Well, when the Canes did the same thing to Kotkaniemi and provided a contract they felt Montreal might not match, and they were right. They didn't. They let him walk, and I think it's been a wise decision. Although the compensation they ended up getting for Kotkaniemi was kind of wasted in a sense. They traded for Christian Dvorak with that first rounder, and at the end of the day, he hasn't worked out. I mean, at the time, it seemed like a decent deal, but it has not worked out. I think they would have rather have made a different move, but the ones running the team now that were not involved with that, a different regime at the time. But of course, even though all the GMs involved here are gone, Waddell's not there in Carolina anymore, Bergevin's not in Montreal anymore, but the owners are. And it's, Tom Dundon's a very, very, very hands-on owner, and it was, lots of reports that he was really not thrilled and had a lot of involvement in that, involving the tactics with Montreal. So I think Kypreos is probably onto something here. Wouldn't be shocking. They don't want to help Montreal considering what these two teams have gone through with their recent history. So we'll see if Kypreos is right, but he says there's no chance at all, regardless of the offer, that they would move Necas to Montreal. There's been other teams mentioned. Like I said, we've heard about Waddell in Columbus, maybe trying to bring his former player over to the Blue Jackets, who certainly could give him a bigger role for what he wants. There's been lots of other teams mentioned. We've heard Chicago. I've heard San Jose. Of course, trying to come out of this rebuild could give him a bigger role. So there's some options, and there's lots of others. There's no shortage of teams that are going to show interest in this guy. So we'll see what happens. But according to Kypreos, Montreal, a non-starter for the Canes because of the bad blood. New York Rangers, of course, recently eliminated here by the Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers. We do know that there's probably bound to be some change there. The New York Post did an interview with a recent article where they talked to Chris Drury, and he says that nothing is off the table. So that kind of gives us a broad scope here to go by. One of the big things facing the Rangers this offseason, which has been a lot of talk lately, is the pending extension for Igor Shesterkin. The belief is that he's looking for a record-setting contract. Kind of referencing the Carey Price deal and looking at the percentage of cap that he got at the time and everything. If you kind of project all that out, that would give Shesterkin around a $12 million a year contract. That's a hefty amount for a goalie. It's hard to argue that some of the top elite goalies in the league are not worth that money, because you could argue that they very much are. But I know there's a lot of teams that almost refuse to spend out on goaltending nowadays. But they're going to be put in a tough spot. It's going to eat up a lot of their cap. I know they're going to want to keep him. And based on how they played in the playoffs, he was their backbone. And to be honest, based on how that team played, there's no way they make it to round 3 without him. And even have a chance to win round 3 at that. So, in all honesty, they got to do what they got to do to figure that out. But that could really drastically alter how their cap is structured. Lots of talk about Captain Jacob Trouba. I know a lot of fans are upset with his play. I don't know that he's really going anywhere, but I know they could consider a buyout. But at the same time, logistically, I don't know that's likely. But one name that I do think is very likely to go is youngster Capo Caco, who's been in the league a while now. Is on a second contract, going on another one here. I'm going to need a new deal. And it just hasn't worked out. We've seen Lafreniere finally take off after an extended time with the Rangers. He gets a bigger role, taking advantage. Kako had opportunities in the top 6 this year too. Didn't seize it like Lafreniere did, so he didn't stick there consistently. And I know we said Necas is unlikely to go to Montreal if Kypreos is right, and he probably is onto something there. But Kakko is a player that I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Like I said before, Jeff Gorton, the executive VP here for the Habs, was the guy who drafted him with the Rangers, right? And he was drafted with a lot of talent, a lot of upside. Needs a new scenery, needs a new role, new coaching. Marty St. Louis has been terrific for a lot of these young guys. It's going to boil down to price, but I can certainly see Montreal being more likely to make a push for a guy like Kakko over Necas. Now, they probably prefer to have Necas. I just don't know that they're going to. Well, the other thing with Necas in Carolina is they want a top young player coming back. They want more of a hockey trade. I don't know that Montreal can really do that. They have players that I think Carolina would be interested in, but they're not players that Montreal is going to want to give up. So I think that would be very difficult for them to pull off. And the rumor is around the Trevor Zegras rumors is that the Habs have a lot of interest there, but currently, unless the asking price changes, it's probably not likely going to happen because they want one of their top young D, and rumors have it that they're asking for either David Reinbacher or Caden Goulet. So they're probably not going to want to do that either. You never know. Maybe they will, but it's tough to see them doing that right now, right? So that probably takes them out of those conversations anyway. But a deal like Kakko might be the more, logical one from a price perspective, the familiarity perspective, and we'll see. But obviously, the Rangers will be busy, and because they haven't been able to get over that hump, maybe we'll see something more significant, but right now, that's where things stand with them. And are the Penguins heading more towards a rebuild? We heard comments from Kyle Dubas at the NHL Draft Combine going on this weekend in Buffalo, and it certainly sounds like a bit of a direction change of the team. And it makes me wonder, after last year, when he first took over, he had a big offseason, made a bunch of moves, traded for Erik Karlsson, he re-signed Tristan Jarry, which a lot of people didn't expect to see, brought in Riley Smith, brought in Alex Nedeljkovic, and for the most part, a lot of the moves didn't really work out. They did get some players off the books that they were unhappy with, so there was that. But generally speaking, they didn't have a great year. They missed the playoffs again. Karlsson went from 100 points to like half of that total. Not to say that this is all on Karlsson, it's not, but it just wasn't the year that anybody was expecting. It sounds like they're having regrets around the Tristan Jarry contract extension last year. They'll stick with them if they have to, but we know that he is available. Riley Smith is available. They would prefer a hockey trade there, like I said yesterday. If they can find another similar veteran that maybe they can swap places, get a fresh start, somebody on a comparable contract, that's the kind of deal they're looking for there. But the comments from Dubas really signaled a different approach than we've seen before. His comments were, just to kind of summarize, I'm not quoting him verbatim, but major focus on acquiring as many young players, prospects, and draft picks as we can to infuse the team with good young talent. Also felt it was an urgent need for the team to infuse the organization with those picks, prospects, and young players. They don't have a first-round pick in this year's draft, which is where the bulk of the higher-end talent is. Could we see them try to get one? The main player, to be honest, that I can see them moving, because if you look at their roster and who could they move to get a first-round pick? There's probably only two, and one of them, to be honest, is debatable. But it would also depend on where in the first round the pick was, because not all picks in the first round are treated equally. If you're picking at 25, 26, 27, big difference than if you're picking at like 10 or 11 or higher. So very much different value. But obviously we know the goaltending market right now, there's enough teams looking for goaltending help that maybe they find a taker for Tristan Jarry. A lot of Jerry's issues have been health related. A bit of inconsistency, but he'd be a better option for some teams than some of the options that are out there. Statistically speaking, he's been better than John Gibson. We've heard Gibson's name out there a lot. We know that Jonas Korpisalo is out there with Ottawa. Well, he's been statistically better than Korpisalo. Most goalies have been last year. So for the teams that are looking and trying to upgrade and find that guy, they might be more willing to take Jarry than some of these other guys, and maybe they get a late first round pick. I don't know. I'm not really sure. At the same time, though, if they move Jarry, then I would suspect the team to shift more to trying to keep Nedeljkovic. They want to try to keep in touch with him. It's not a given that he goes, but if they can't move Jarry, I think he probably does move on. Another name that I think could generate that, and I don't know that they really want to move him because I think there are some question marks around the health of Chris Letang, but I wonder if they're having buyer's remorse on Erik Karlsson. He would be able to generate that kind of draft pick. So I don't have any information to suggest that they are having trade talks around Karlsson. I don't want to suggest that, but I am just my gut feeling saying, okay, these comments lead me to think that we're going to see a big shift in direction and that we're going to see some changes here. And what kind of assets do they have that might be able to generate these returns that Dubas is suddenly making sound that it's an urgent need for his franchise? And that's when you kind of pin it all together to me where things could go. Of course, we are also expecting, and I suggest that we use the word expecting because it's not a given, and I don't want to speculate to say how Crosby's feeling because I don't know, but we are expected to see a Sidney Crosby contract extension. It could come easily on July 1st. Maybe he wants to wait. I don't know. I suspect he wants to stick with his running mates in Letang, Malkin after they've extended. I'd be shocked if it wasn't done and he goes into the year on a final year. But, does he want to see these moves first? I don't know. Like Crosby to me is just one of the most hyper-competitive athletes we've ever seen. It's hard to imagine him writing out his career in the final, 3-4 years or whatever. Well, at least we think could be the final 3 or 4 years. You never know. On a rebuilding team. Because, it takes a while. So it's hard to say. But the Penguins, suddenly, based on these comments to me, does indicate a major shift in direction. So we will see what that means as the offseason moves forward. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.